to another episode of Inside Eastern Utah. We have a special episode today with a special guest. We are going to have a legislative update of everything that happened in this past session, and Christine Watkins is joining us today to talk all about it and about her work. So thank you for joining us today, Christine.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't know that we have enough time to talk about everything.
But we'll get
talk
through as
about a
much
lot.
as we can. Yes, we're going to start with a bit of the bills that you headed and what that looked like this year. Do you want to kind of take us through it?
Sure. I filed House Bill 785. That lets you know how many bills there were. And this was a volunteer. Actually, this one was 78. I apologize. It was I was thinking.
There's a lot of numbers to remember.
I filed this one it was my very first one that I filed, and it dealt with volunteer fire departments.
Yes.
And the financial reporting that the state wants them to do on a special website that's supposed to be all about transparency and how government money is being spent. And the issue is that with some of these volunteer fire departments, they truly are volunteering.
Yes.
And so they're required by this state, by a bill that was passed in 2016, to file a financial statement quarterly, 4 times a year.
A lot of work.
A lot of work. And on a website that's not very user-friendly. And some of these people are older, they're not as adept at doing things with the computer or on websites. So I filed the bill just to make it so that they didn't have to do that. They already have to file with the local city or county.
Yes.
So they're held to certain requirements. So after, it was interesting, the bill had passed the House, was on the Senate side, and Senator Henderson is in charge of the Rules Committee, and it was her bill that required this.
Oh.
And so here my bill comes into her purview, and it was not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I had actually met with John Dougal. We had a rather raucous discussion, and his word was transparency. My word was volunteer. And so I ended up talking with Senator Henderson and the gentleman who's in charge of this website. So we talked about it, and I let him know, what in rural Utah, where this is where all the volunteer firemen are, we're pretty independent, and so they felt that they were being sort of put upon to do this quarterly. So rather than the bill going on, which it wasn't, we have negotiated that the people who have to do this, they could send a picture to this department and they'll file it for them.
Oh.
And they have also promised to work on their software and make it more user-friendly. So
that's a win.
Yes.
Check in the win column.
Yeah, I double-checked, made sure the last week of the session that was going to happen, and I will continue to watch that. And then the next one was House Bill 112, and it was payments of state care of children. And when people have their children taken by DCFS, they are actually, even if they're economically challenged, required to make a minimum payment to the state for those kids.
Which can be a burden.
Which can be a huge burden, because they're already trying to meet all the requirements that have been put on them, to attending classes, working, doing this, doing that. And for some of them, it is so overwhelming that to all of a sudden then to say, whatever money you're getting, we're going to take some of that to help with these kids. So this is for the very, very poorest of the poor. And if they meet certain requirements as to where their money's coming from and how much they get by the size of their family, they don't have to ask for a waiver. It is just their caseworker just puts that information into the Office of Recovery Services, and there's no attempt to get any of that money.
And I love that you don't even have to go through a waiver because a whole nother process, a whole nother application would just be a whole nother headache and more time.
And these people are already struggling with a myriad of issues. So why impose one more? So in actuality, this actual bill affected maybe 30 or 35 to 40 families right now, because others have already asked for the waiver. But this came from a constituent who fit this criteria, but no one told him that he could ask for a waiver. And so, obviously, and this happened several years ago, so he did that. And excuse me, so that was a good one. And then we had House Bill 161. This was a very popular bill. It even surprised me. I had someone locally come to me and say, you know what, I really don't like having to have, excuse me, my voice got dry, my car registration in my car.
Yeah.
And if I don't have it, if I can't find it, even if I know it's there, it could be up to a $100 fine.
Yes, and with my glove box, that could be an issue. It could be in there, but I might not find it in a timely manner.
While I'm searching through. So we got this bill passed. It was interesting to pass because the first committee that I went to in transportation loved the bill. And they said, why don't you just do away with this law, period. So we backed up, did that. And then some of them decided, we're not sure if we want to totally do away with it. So we backed up again. You don't have to sign that registration. You don't have to have it in your car, or you can, you know, if that makes you comfortable, that certainly you can do that. There's no fine if you don't have it.
So usually a law enforcement officer, for example, if you get pulled over, they can look that up.
Right.
They know if it's registered or not.
They already know. They look at your license plate and they're putting it in their computer. They've got that. So it was fun to take that to the Senate side, because one of the senators said, this is the best bill I've seen all session. So it too made it through, and that was a lot of fun to do that one. One of my big ones was the Business Expansion and Retention Initiative.
Yes.
That was huge.
Otherwise known as BEAR.
BEAR, yes. And because if you get the initials, the acronym is BEAR. And that was brought by the BEAR committee with Carbon and Emory County. And what had been happening is the money that they were supposed to be given was fluctuating, and it was just going down and down. And then they met all their requirements and turned in for payment, and they would wait for months. And they shouldn't have to, because they've already got people hired and doing things. So I went in with this bill, took some negotiations with GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, but it comes from the Industrial Assistance Fund. And it's a huge pot of money that all sorts of people draw money from. But we created a floor. In other words, the funding can't go below this.
Okay.
And so not only for the BEAR program, but for the Fast Track program that people can borrow money from and get grants and stuff. So we created the floor. We opened up that counties could choose apply with a grant process, whatever program they want to do. And that there had to be communication between GOED and the Governor's Rural Partnership Board. And that had not been going on before. So it ended up doing a lot of good things for rural Utah.
Yes, I know that the local BEAR chapter was very, very excited about that. So those are some of the highlights. Any others you want to touch on that were important this year?
The director of the museum, our local prehistoric museum, came to me, and they have not had any funding increases since 2010.
Wow.
A long time.
So 8 years.
Yeah, and so he gave me a schedule of what they were doing. We have highly educated people working down there. They've not received any increases in anything, and obviously they're very passionate about the work that they do. So I put in for a $100,000 increase for them, and this is before we knew all of the money that was going to be coming our way. The committee that I presented it to cut it in half. They still had it high on their agenda, but they went down to $50,000. And then when push came to shove in the last week, it was just gone. It wasn't going to be funded. So then, so then we get to campaign for our cause with our fellow representatives. We had so much money that we could draw from. So I sent out an email to all my fellow representatives, sent them some information about the museum. Excuse me.
You can take a drink if you
I'm
want. I
going to have
will
to.
allow you.
I don't know what's happened here. And pushed it, and we got it.
Great.
So
the
they-
full 100
No,
or
they get
50?
50,000.
Well, that is better than nothing, right?
That's exactly, and I'll work for some more next year. And they have a part of the building that they want to remodel. So that's going to be really important to them, and I was really excited.
And I think that's what is so great about the work that's going on down at the museum is they are constantly evolving and changing and bringing in new stuff, bringing in exhibits. So they aren't just staying stagnant,
No.
so their
And
money
that's what
can't either.
the director, Ken Carpenter, that's his goal. That if you've been to the museum, that if you've come a year ago and you come this summer,
Something's
it's
gonna be
not the
different.
same.
Yep.
And that temporary exhibit room is one of the rooms they want to
Yes.
remodel and upgrade. So
And just think if you haven't been in like 10 years,
Oh
which
my
probably
gosh,
a lot of people
yeah.
have, they wouldn't even recognize it when they walk in again.
And you know, our museum is an economic driver here.
Mm-hmm.
People come here and they stop by and they go through
course.
that museum because
Yes.
it's a great museum.
Oh, they get travelers from all over.
Yep, yep. So it helps us with that little destination piece that we
Of course.
definitely want people to pay attention to the city of Price and to Carbon County.
And it's really great for the locals as well. I mean, you see students going through there all school year.
Yep.
The kids love going and seeing
Yep.
everything.
And with our STEM technology, there's a lot of things that can be related to the museum.
Yep.
And we're members because our grandson loves to go to that museum.
Yes.
So we can go in whenever we want. We love it.
Well, that is certainly a success then. We're going to take a short break and
Okay.
we're going to come back and we're going to talk a bit more, kind of maybe a bit on the financial
Okay.
side and some other stuff that happened. So stay tuned. We're going to be back in just a few minutes on Inside Eastern Utah.